Hello there, my RPG lovers, and welcome to another video. Hidden Gems or Trash series has been running for almost 3 years.
Oh yeah? Then I lied. I like to lie, so get used to it.
It's the series where I try various obscure RPGs, action adventures, and some similar games that even remotely fall into those genres. So if this is your first time learning about this series of videos and you end up liking the content, you have a full list of previous videos in the series, or you can check out a couple of huge videos with all games that I covered so far. Anyway, this is the 16th episode in the mainline series, and I got some pretty damn interesting and very obscure games to show you.
Thank you.
I'm always having a blast playing these games, even though some of them turned out to be pretty bad, because I know I'm going to have a lot of fun with making the video. Some of them turn out to be real hidden gems, and I can't wait to show you what I experienced while making this episode. Trying to find some of these obscure games online can lead you to some dangerous websites. Surfshark VPN, the sponsor of this video, can help you with that. It will block ads and malware and help you stay protected by encrypting your internet activity. There is a built-in antivirus software which will check files in real time during downloads without slowing down your PC. The alert feature will notify you when there is any suspicious behavior on your device. You'll get immediate alerts if your email address appears in breached online databases. It will protect your credit cards and personal ID number. Surfshark VPN has some other cool features as well. For example, if you watch Netflix and some of your favorite shows are not available in your country, you can simply connect to another server and start watching those shows. It works the same with the censored gaming content. If your country censored a game for whatever reason, you can simply use Surfshark VPN and access the original version of the game. There is a 30 days money back guarantee policy, so you can easily get your money back if you're not satisfied with the product. Use my link in the video description to download Surfshark, and make sure to use the code CLICK4GAMEPLAY at checkout to get 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN. Number 5. Etrom Astral Essence. Etrom Astral Essence is an action RPG from 2006. There is a Steam version called Etrom 20th Anniversary Edition, and is the only modern version of the game that you can buy nowadays. Sadly, this is a very problematic, I wanted to say a remaster, but this is basically just a new release of the game so it can work on modern PCs. Well, it's not even that, because even the Steam page has an elaborate explanation about the poor technical state of the game. Etrom runs on a proprietary engine which was made by one guy, so it's almost impossible to make some significant changes and improvements, according to Age of Games developers at least. The biggest struggle I had is getting the damn thing to run on a decent resolution like Full HD. Even with DigiVoodoo 2, I could not force the game to run on at least Full HD. You only have 3 options for the resolution, but even if you settle with one of them, you're still going to have problems with the text font in the game, which is annoying to say the least. On the bright side, I didn't have any crashes with my short time with the game, even though the Steam page said you can expect to have those. Lol. So if by any chance you decide to buy this game, you should know what you're getting into. Putting all of that aside, let's talk about the actual game. The sci-fi setting of Etrom is somewhat interesting, but the story itself is pretty bad. You play as a common soldier who happens to find an ancient artifact which gives him some superpowers, like being able to transform into a huge monster. Etrom is the name of the main character, and he encounters something called Astral Essence. This becomes a valuable resource for Etrom. You use it for turning into that monster I mentioned before, as well as some other skills. As soon as Etrom discovered this essence, he left the force in search for answers. He was a police officer before. When he left the force, he basically became an outlaw, so now you have to fight pretty much all soldiers you come across. His first mission is to find a prophet, who is supposed to tell him more about this essence and serve him as a guide. Since I mentioned the first mission, until you reach this guy, you won't be able to save the game, like, at all. That's a very stupid design decision, and it might be very frustrating for a lot of new players, because the first mission can take up to 15 to 30 minutes, depending on how you play. Having to get used to a very awkward control scheme can make this even more frustrating, but more about the gameplay in a minute. You can tell that the writing in this game is poorly translated from the original language, which would be Italian, I guess, because the original developers of Etrom were from Italy. I have no idea how good is the story and writing on Italian, but on English it's pretty bad. You'll have to do a lot of reading because there is no voice acting at all, and some of these NPCs will go on and on with the dialogue, although you can easily skip it if you want to. After the tutorial mission, you unlock something like a hub area. The Prophet then tells you that you need to gather 7 special keys, which turns into your main mission. You'll have to come back to this place quite often because only here you can save the game and level up your character. Once you gain enough experience points, you have to interact with this thing and level up your character. The progression system is some very basic RPG stuff with some awkward skills. The combat is okay at best for a point-and-click action RPG from this time period, but like I said before, the controls are awkward and janky. You control Etrom with point-and-click and you have to use arrow keys for turning the camera around. It's nothing too crazy or too bad, it's just a bit awkward and it takes some time to get used to. But is it worth it though? No, it's not. I didn't have a lot of fun with the gameplay. It's not really that bad, it's just way too simplistic, which ends up being very boring for me. All you're doing is clicking on the enemy with your melee or ranged weapons until they die, and occasionally using a couple of abilities. Turning into a huge monster is kinda cool, but you have to have a full Astral essence bar. Speaking of full bars, the only way you heal in the game is by getting the red pills from enemies or buying them from a merchant. Same goes for the Astral essence bar. Instead of stacking these items, the game counts them as individual items for some reason. So you can't just press one button to heal, you have to place these items on separate bars, and that's not a very good design. Your inventory is also pretty awkward but functional, I guess. You have a couple of different loadouts you can use, and not so many inventory slots for items. Again, none of these items have a stacking mechanic, which is just mind-boggling to me. Then again, the whole engine is developed by one guy, like I said before, and this was way back in the day, which makes it even more impressive. It's very hard to recommend it nowadays because there are so many other similar RPGs which do a much better job with, well, everything. Etrom reminds me a little bit of another game that I covered in this series called Hellgate London. Only because of the setting though, because Hellgate London was a much better game in general. Anyway, I don't recommend buying Etrom today, unless this is your childhood game or something and you wanna do it for nostalgia and you completely forgot about it. Which happens quite a bit in this video series, and those kind of comments are very cool to see. No matter how good or bad they were, finding the game that you played a long time like this is almost like finding a long lost friend. Number 4. Krater. Krater is a real-time strategy RPG which came out in 2012 for PC. At the first glance, Krater seemed like an interesting game.
I'm not gonna lie to you. This is how it is.
It's set in post-apocalyptic Sweden, which sounds like it could be really cool. You can definitely see some Fallout and even Borderlands inspiration here. Even though the setting is post-apocalyptic, the writing is very light-hearted. I actually think the writing is solid, but the story itself is just all over the place and it goes nowhere. There is some optional lore information from certain NPCs, but you're quickly going to forget why you're even doing these quests. NPCs will just mumble a couple of words in dialogues, there is no actual voice acting.
Welcome, seasoned traveler. Listen carefully.
Well, there is technically, because sometimes they will speak a couple of words in the beginning. That would be totally fine by me if the story and the quests were more interesting or if the gameplay was very good. Speaking of NPCs, you won't be able to remember any of them, even though the character design is kinda interesting in the game. Not to the point where the game creates memorable characters, but they're just interesting to look at. The graphics are not that great either, even for 2012 standards. The artistic style is pretty generic when it comes to environments that you're going to explore, but like I said, the character design is kinda cool. It's not a very pretty game to look at, that's for sure. Populated places look fine, and they give the game a certain charm. You can hear some music band rocking out nearby, which is kinda cool. My initial impressions were quite positive actually, but sadly, it doesn't take long until the flaws of this game start showing their ugly heads. You get to create a squad of 3 characters. Well, you don't actually get to create characters, because there is no character creation system. You start off with only 1 character at first, and you can recruit a lot more, but you can only control 3 characters at once. All of these characters have a unique look and class. They only have 2 unique skills they can use in combat, so you get 6 skills in total. There are more than 6 skills in the game, because some characters will have unique skills. You can find booster items which will improve these skills, as well as implants that will boost some of your stats, and that's about it. Your characters will level up automatically, but you don't get any skill points or new abilities. You will only start unlocking more of these booster slots to improve the existing abilities, and that's about it. You can pick up some gadgets along the way as well, which gives you 3 more abilities that you can use. You'll immediately notice the lack of depth within the gameplay systems. I mean, having simple gameplay systems is not bad by default, as long as you make sure to make the gameplay itself fun. On the other side, why would you even try to make a quote-unquote strategy RPG with bare bones strategy elements? You can win most fights by just spamming buttons. After the tutorial, the game asks you if you want to continue with the normal mode, and I said yes, and I thought I could change the difficulty later. But there's no option for that in the menu for some reason. Although even the normal difficulty started feeling very tedious. Like I said, my first impressions were pretty decent. The controls in the game are very responsive and snappy, and I was very happy with how the game controls in general. It's simple and it works. You press the button for ability and your character will use it immediately. Same goes for the movement on the map, and you can rotate the camera around, which is cool and actually necessary sometimes. But that was not enough to keep me from getting extremely bored after just a couple of hours of gameplay. No matter which enemy you fight, you can use the same quote-unquote tactic to defeat them, because they don't do that much. Oh yeah, enemies will respawn if you leave and come back to the zone. That would be fine if this didn't happen the moment you just enter and re-enter the same floor in the dungeon, for example. It's very annoying. So even if you accidentally leave the floor and come back, you'll have to clear the whole level again. Same goes if your whole party dies. The combat was somewhat interesting at first, but you're quickly going to start fighting enemies with bloated health bars, which slows it down a lot. Essentially, all you're doing is waiting for the cooldowns on your abilities to end so you can use them again. Some of these abilities have some glimpses of strategy elements. For example, the Slayer class has an ability which deals more damage when you backstab enemies. There is a simple aggro system and so on. But none of that matters a lot in actual combats. You can create a tank, healer and DPS Holy Trinity squad, which I did. That by itself could have been a lot more interesting if the combat encounters were any good, but they're not.
Oh yes, of course, I see. Indeed.
Repositioning your squad members can be tedious, because they will usually get body blocked, so it's not even worth it. The level design is very simple. These maps only have a couple of narrow corridors, and some of them are optional. Quest objectives can be described in the same manner. I really hate this kind of level design, not only in strategy RPGs, but in ARPGs or just RPGs in general. Krater also has a world map, which you have to use when you travel to other major locations. Again, it's very simple and it works as you would expect. There are some random encounters that can interrupt your travels or when something happens within the story. The itemization system is also pretty boring, although the crafting system seems decent. Overall, this game had some potential to be decent, but it ended up being very boring because of the underwhelming systems and forgettable story.
I'm not gonna lie to you. This is how it is.
Krater fell into obscurity shortly after it released, and it's not so hard to see why. Number 3. Tehra Dark Warrior. Tehra Dark Warrior is actually a PSP minigame. If you never heard about that term, it was used to describe some very small PSP games which were usually very simplistic. But not all PSP minigames were like this, and Tehra Dark Warrior is one of those exceptions. This is more of an action-adventure game with some very light RPG progression. To tell you the truth, I wanted to quit this game after about 40 minutes because I didn't really like it that much. But I knew the game is very short in general, so I decided to stick around and complete the playthrough. My opinion did change because I started liking the game a lot more, but I still have a love-hate relationship with it. It's a very simple action-adventure with solid but pretty stiff combat system. It starts off very easy, which gives you the feeling that you're playing a hack and slash game. But it has some very high difficulty spikes after about a few levels, so you're forced to use all combat mechanics in order to progress. Those would include some simple combos, blocking, dodging, and using a couple of different spells. There are only a handful of melee upgrades to get, but they are pretty much essential. You need a parry ability if you even want to have a chance against some of these enemies. The dodge seems to have some iframes, and it's very useful against some enemies. However, I think the most useful melee ability is definitely the parry, because it works against bosses as well. You will put most enemies on the ground when you parry, and you can even stun lock some of them if you perform the longest combo in time. Even though the game is pretty short, it starts feeling very repetitive, very fast, mostly because of the lack of unique enemy types. You're forced to fight several enemy types throughout the entire game, and some of them are just very annoying. I did like the strongest enemies that were introduced later in the game, like these big knights, but they only have 1 or 2 attacks. These red skeletons have to be the worst enemy type in the game, and I hate fighting them. They hit very fast, and your only option is to parry every attack. You can't even properly do damage while they're on the ground, so you have to parry and parry and parry. It's very annoying. I'm sure some spells will deal decent damage to them, but I focused only on the strong attack spell and the fire spell to a lesser degree, which actually heals them upon hit. What the fuck? The level design is very simple, and you actually need to collect something in different corners of the map and return to the center to unlock a door or a portal to progress. The most annoying objectives are where you need to destroy a bunch of things on the level in order to get rid of the shield of the enemy or something similar. It's just very tedious and boring because you need to avoid enemies while trying to deal damage to these things. In these situations, it's not even worth killing them because they just get destroyed when you destroy the totems. Some bosses also have the same philosophy. The game will bombard you with regular NPCs, and the boss will also chase you while you try to destroy the stones. Once you actually get to fight the damn boss, he literally only has 1 attack, which is easily dodgeable. Other boss fights just require you to parry and avoid normal NPCs as much as possible. I'm making it sound like the game has a ton of bosses, which is not true, and most of them have 1 or 2 mechanics at most. Tehra has a mana bar, which allows her to cast some spells that you can get with the coins you collect. This mana bar also allows you to transform into an orc, I guess. Tehra is supposed to be a hybrid. She's a human and orc who was created to keep the peace between 2 races. But after orcs broke the truce, Tehra was summoned again to investigate the disturbances. That will be the main story of the game, and it's pretty weak. It's not even worth mentioning, to be honest. You'll get some context after every chapter with some text on the screen, and that's about it. It's a simple little action adventure that also came out on iPhone. I'm glad I decided to complete it because, like I said, I ended up liking it a lot more, but not enough to recommend it, to be honest. Number 2. Exoplanet, First Contact. Exoplanet First Contact is an open-world third-person action RPG that's been around ever since 2016. And guess what? This game is still in early access, although it's not exactly abandoned. It's still receiving updates on somewhat regular basis. As a matter of fact, there was a major update recently, and that's one of the reasons why I decided to try the game out right now. I've been aware of this game for a long time, and I just wanted to wait for the full version so I can finally cover it, maybe even with a review. It seems like that won't be happening anytime soon, even though the game is still receiving updates. We're expecting to release a full game in 2023/2024. Yeah, I think they should update this. Anyway, the first time I saw this game, it kinda reminded me of Elex, because it seemed like a budget version of that game. Which is ironic, because Elex wasn't a big budget game, but it still had at least a couple of millions for the development, which puts it in a AA category, I guess. Exoplanet is obviously an indie title, but that doesn't matter a lot. How is the actual game, C4G? Well, my first impressions were very bad, up to the point where I almost quit entirely and not even include the game on the list. But as I kept playing, I started liking it more and more, although it's still very hard to recommend. First of all, you play the game as a guy called Jack Sharp. He's a space nomad and a skilled gunslinger who landed on a remote and dangerous planet. It's a pretty interesting premise for the story, and I really wanted to learn more about it. You get an AI companion that's constantly by your side, providing you with hints and just chatting with you every now and then. It's not exactly a physical companion who will help you out in combat or anything like that. There are some pretty interesting little cutscenes, and I'm not sure if some of those were intentional, but they got a good laugh out of me, that's for sure. The same can be said about some quests, like the cleaning robot that's stuck on a rock on a little lake. He can't quote-unquote sweep, and he needs some help. I thought the writing is pretty good as well, which kinda took me by surprise. And you can't blame me for that, because up to this point I played a ton of similar games with terrible writing. Well, Exoplanet is definitely not one of those games. The characters, quests, and the story in general is one of the main reasons why you might want to give this game a chance. You can tell that whoever wrote this dialogue and worked on the game truly loves what they're doing. But is that enough? Well, no, unfortunately. The gameplay is still in a very rough shape, even after all those years of development. The melee combat is very bad, because it severely lacks the sense of weight or impact.
I'm not gonna lie to you. This is how it is.
Although the mechanics behind it are not so bad, and they have the right idea for the system itself. There is a little combo system, and you'll deal a lot more damage if you manage to pull off the entire combo. Performing the combo or just playing with melee weapons just feels very bad, and I think it needs a complete revamp. I didn't have a lot of issues with the controls, I think the game controls fine. I played with my Xbox controller and a little bit with mouse and keyboard, and it's totally fine, that's not a problem. It's not exactly a very snappy control scheme, but it would be serviceable if the gameplay was any better. There is a stamina system as well, which just makes the combat even worse, unfortunately. The range combat, on the other hand, feels much better. It's still not amazing or anything, but it actually packs quite a punch and it feels decent. Using this gun felt way better than any melee weapon I tried out. Some of the skills felt very unfinished though, like the bullet time mechanic. It's like they only slow down the gameplay for about 50% or something, there are no special visual or sound effects. Like I said, it's very rough around the edges. On the bright side, the game seems to offer a very nice variety of playstyles. There is a full-blown stealth system, you can take down unaware enemies, backstab enemies even in combat if you have the skill, knock people down, or even kill them after that and take all of their stuff. All of those RPG aspects seem decent, and you can play as a huge asshole in the game, which I did. I killed the first alien NPC I came across and just took all of his stuff and sold it later. You can talk with him and ask him a bunch of questions, but why would you wanna do that? I usually play as a goody-goody two-shoes character in RPGs, but lately I like to test out evil playthroughs in RPGs if possible. Dialogue also fully supports skill checks and it has meaningful decisions you can make. This is why I started liking the game the more I played it. They definitely have the right idea for the story and quests and all RPG systems and mechanics. Almost. There is no voice acting though, not even a little bit. I think some voice acting would put the emphasis on how good the character and dialogue are in this game. The exploration itself is okay so far. The world is dangerous and it seems like all NPCs have fixed levels. There is a lot to loot and you have a scanning ability which makes this much easier. The scanning ability also gives you crucial information about the NPCs you discover. You might have noticed already, but this game doesn't exactly run very good on my PC. I was kinda forced to run it on the highest resolution of my monitor, which will be 4K, because when I tried to run it on lower resolutions, my recordings of the game were just black screen, and I lost a lot of footage because of this. On Full HD and 2K the game runs much better, but it still has a lot of FPS drops, no matter which settings I chose. It definitely still needs a lot of optimization. Like I said before, it's very hard to recommend this game, but I guess there is still hope. I'm willing to check out the 1.0 version of the game if it ever comes out. Number 1. Draken, the Ancient Gates. Draken the Ancient Gates is a 2002 action-adventure with RPG elements. This was a sequel to Draken Order of the Flame, which came out in 1999. But C4G, why didn't you play the first game first? Well, I tried, but no matter what I did, I just couldn't get this game to work on my PC. So I just started playing the sequel instead, and let me tell you one thing. This is one of the biggest hidden gems that I ever featured in this series.
But we shouldn't start celebrating just yet.
Up to the point where I'm going to make a dedicated video about it shortly after this video goes live. I'm also going to try again and get the first game to work, and hopefully I'll have more luck the second time around. Anyway, Draken the Ancient Gates came out exclusively on PS2, and it's easily one of the most impressive PS2 games that I ever played. At the first glance, it might not seem like that because the graphics are pretty bad, even for 2002 standards. You can easily find a PS2 game from 2002 which looks way better than this. However, you'll struggle to find another PS2 game with such impressive features. The Ancient Gates features a couple of different maps which are fully open. It's essentially an open world action adventure which allows you to explore it on foot or on your dragon. I played a bunch of similar PS2 games which are very limited in terms of exploration, so I was shocked with the open nature of this world. Not only that, the gameplay in Ancient Gates aged pretty damn well. But let's start with the setting and the story first. You're basically playing as a medieval version of Lara Croft. I mean, that's a joke, but I can bet this character design was influenced by Lara Croft character at least a little bit. You play as a girl called Rin, who is a dragon tamer. Erok is the name of your dragon, and he's also one of the main characters. The main story itself is pretty simplistic, but pretty interesting nonetheless. Mostly because of these two main characters and how they interact with each other and the rest of the NPCs. The voice acting and the dialogue is very decent.
I believe this is what you seek to destroy, is it not?
I hope you understood all that.
The spirits are unwilling servants. We must decipher their meanings as best we can.
What was that thing?
They call themselves the Desert Lords, a race of sorcerers from the demon world, Sasul.
Every NPC is fully voice acted in this world, which is also pretty impressive.
This is madness!
You won't find a ton of NPCs, but there are more than enough populated places with NPCs, big and small. As for the story itself, an evil race of three-faced beings known as the Desert Lords have begun rallying the monsters from around the world and enslaving humans. You and your dragon have to find these 4 ancient gates around the world which lead to the Dragon Mother. The goal is to reunite humans and dragons to fight back against the Desert Lords, and that's about it. I love how this game did quests, and you find a lot of side quests and secrets if you want to explore everything. A lot of these quests will show you dots on the map and show you where you need to go, but you'll have to work for some of them by asking certain NPCs for directions. The controls in Ancient Gates are very responsive and snappy, even for today's standards. The only thing we can consider as outdated, I guess, is the fact that you can't turn your camera with the right thumbstick. You move your character with the left thumbstick, which also turns your camera. Everything else works very similar to a modern third-person action RPG or even a Souls-like. Moving around and jumping feels very fluid, you can crouch, dodge, do backflips, grab ledges and so on. All of these actions feel very natural and not outdated by any means. In fact, this game might have been one of the pioneers when it comes to such great third-person controls. Then we have the dragon gameplay, which makes this game even more impressive on so many levels, no pun intended. You can fly around these maps and use the dragon to fight other dragons, destroy objects and even kill regular enemies that you fight on the ground. The dragon gameplay in this game reminds me of Divinity 2 Ego Draconis, which had an identical feature. However, even in that game you couldn't use the dragon to fight enemies on the ground, they would simply disappear once you turn into a dragon. That makes this game even more impressive in a way, because it managed to outshine a similar game which came out 7 years later. As for the combat, it's pretty basic but pretty enjoyable, and it offers a decent variety of playstyles. You get to fight as a melee, ranged or a magic character. I played as a melee character, although I invested a couple of points into range as well and bought some spells that I used. There is a simple 3-hit combo for melee attacks, which I used from the beginning to the very end. You have more attacks at your disposal, although I found my tactic to work the best. There are some directional attacks which the game shows you in the beginning, but I quickly forgot about those. I didn't find the use for these attacks, but I will definitely do more playthroughs of this game and experiment more with different combat moves. I usually tend to stick with what works and only change it if I hit a brick wall, but you might be more creative than me. I would just start a combo from a distance with a 2-handed weapon and dodge back when it ends. It works 90% of the time. It's not as simple as it sounds though, because you're going to face range, magic and melee opponents. Even though this combat system lacks some depth, it's still very enjoyable. Enemies have a decent reaction to being hit, and even though the combat is a little bit weightless for today's standards, it's not that bad at all. The bosses have some gimmicky mechanics, and the difficulty of the game is on the lower side for sure, but it was still very fun to see everything that this game has to offer. Enemy variety wasn't that great either, but it didn't bother me that much. There is a target lock system that's arguably even better than in some modern ARPGs. It allows you to seamlessly switch targets, and it also shows you the health of the NPC with different colors. Very simple yet very effective. You don't have to use it if you don't want to though, and the combat is functional without it. If you have the shield, you can actively block attacks, and if you're only using a weapon, you can try to parry. Parrying in this game works very similar like in modern ARPGs, and I use it a lot. The range combat with the bow is pretty simple, you just lock in and fire away. But you also have an alternative firing mode which allows you to manually aim. This will be useful and even necessary sometimes. Magic spells can be casted with B plus left thumbstick, but this was kinda useless for me. I just used them through the magic menu by pressing the button because I couldn't get a grasp of the drawing the spell thingy, it's a bit gimmicky. If you want to, you can combine these playstyles a little bit, but you're also going to shoot yourself in the foot by doing so. It seems smarter and more effective to invest leveling up points into only one playstyle if you want to see the full potential of that playstyle. Leveling up in this game is pretty damn slow as well, but this makes getting new equipment more meaningful. You'll find some very nice armors and weapons to buy, which are pretty expensive and they have level requirements. Different item types like bows and swords, for example, require enough skill points invested into those skills. Your dragon companion also has a handful of different spells that he's going to get as you progress through the main story. It's pretty satisfying killing things with your dragon in this game. These maps are kinda limited when it comes to flying because there are some invisible walls, which makes flying a little bit janky for sure. But for the most part, flying works fine and you can call Arok in most situations.
Arok!
What? I'm right here.
You look well rested.
He won't be able to land sometimes because of the terrain, but you'll get to ride him in most cases.
Hold up. Wait a minute.
Wait, that didn't sound right. God damn, I take it back.
But those are just legends.
Overall, this is an extremely impressive PS2 game that's mostly forgotten nowadays, sadly. It's a true hidden gem that I highly recommend. Be sure to check out that dedicated video about this game if you want to hear my in-depth thoughts. It should come out soon if it didn't already. You're really going to miss out if you don't give this game a chance. Draken the Ancient Gates is very easy to emulate nowadays on PC. And that would be it for this episode.
Uh-huh.
Tell me, did you play any of these games and which one was your favorite? Leave a comment down below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more content like this. And if you want to go a step further, consider supporting your boy by becoming a YouTube channel member or a Patreon. Huge thanks to all my current supporters, and I'll see ya in the next one.